The sun was sliding low over the Wyoming horizon, spilling orange fire across the wide-open plains. The little town of Red Rock sat quiet, the kind of quiet that came just before the lamps were lit and the saloon doors swung open to another night of laughter and trouble. At the edge of town, standing by the hitching post outside the general store, Colt McAllister adjusted his hat against the glare. His boots were dust-worn, his hands calloused, his jaw square and shadowed by the stubble of a man who worked too hard to worry about appearances. Colt wasn't here for whiskey, nor for poker, nor for the idle gossip of townsfolk. He was here for something far rarer, a promise made in letters, sealed by prayer, and carried across the mile. For months now he had written back and forth with a woman named Clara, arranged through the preacher's mail-order bride society. Every letter she sent spoke of warmth, kindness, and a steady faith that mirrored his own yearning for a family, a wife, a partner on the lonely ranch he called home. He'd almost talked himself out of it a dozen times. A man ought to ride his own trail, he would mutter when doubt crept in. But nights on the ranch had grown longer, and the silence in his cabin heavier. Even a cowboy carved out of stone couldn't ignore the emptiness forever. So when word came that Clara would arrive on the afternoon wagon, Colt cleaned his boots, saddled his horse, and rode into town. Not fear, just the restless energy of a man whose life was about to change. The stagecoach rattled into town with a thunder of hooves and a spray of dust. Children ran alongside, laughing, while merchants leaned from their doorways to see who had come this time. The driver pulled back the reins with a flourish, and the horses pawed the earth as the wagon came to a halt. Colt straightened, drawing a slow breath. This was the moment. The door creaked open. A gloved hand appeared, followed by the hem of a modest blue dress. Then her, Clara. She was just as he had imagined from her letters. Soft brown hair pinned neatly, eyes bright with the kind of hope only a fresh start could bring. She stepped down carefully, the dust curling around her shoes, and lifted her face toward him. Colt tipped his hat, his voice steady, though his heart kicked like a bronc. But before he could say another word, another hand appeared at the stage door, another hem of fabric, this one the same color, the same cut. And then another face, the same face, identical. The crowd gasped. A murmur rolled through the onlookers like wind through tall grass. Colt blinked hard, unsure if the setting sun was playing tricks on him. The second woman stepped down with more confidence, her chin lifted just slightly higher, her smile a shade more daring. Where Clara's eyes had softened in shyness, this woman's gaze was sharp, alive with unspoken secrets. Clara turned toward the second woman, reaching for her hand, and together they faced Colt. "Mr. McAllister?" Clara asked, her voice gentle as he'd heard in her letters. "This is my sister, Cora. She came with me." Colt's jaw tightened. A sister, an identical twin. He hadn't been expecting that. The crowd whispered louder now, the old men at the saloon porch chuckling into their beards. "Well, ain't that something?" Cowboy ordered a bride, and got two. One cackled. Colt ignored them. He looked from Clara to Cora, searching for some explanation. Clara's hand trembled slightly where it held her sister's. Cora, by contrast, met his eyes with a boldness that unsettled him, as though she were testing him, weighing his worth in that very instant. "Well, welcome to Red Rock," Colt said at last, his voice low, controlled. "Reckon we should talk." The three of them walked together toward the boarding house, the whispers of the town following like a trail of smoke. Behind them, the driver unloaded a single battered trunk, marked with the initials CC. The letters might have stood for Clara, or for Cora, or both. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across Red Rock. And Colt McAllister, who had thought his life was about to settle into steady simplicity, found himself walking straight into the kind of storm no cowboy could ever prepare for. The night came quick in Red Rock, as it always did. Shadows thickened in the narrow streets, lamps flickered to life in the saloon windows, and coyotes howled from the dark hills beyond. Inside the boarding house, the faint glow of a single lantern spilled across the dining table where Colt McAllister sat with Clara and Cora. The smell of stew lingered, though Colt had barely touched his bowl. His eyes kept moving between the sisters. Clara sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze lowered to the table. Cora leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, eyes sharp as a hawk, sizing up the room. Colt finally broke the silence. "You didn't mention a sister in your letters." His voice was steady, but underneath it ran the iron edge of a man who demanded truth. Clara's lips parted as though to answer, but Cora was quicker. "Would you have written back if she had?" Her tone carried a challenge, the kind that rattled even the strongest men. Colt studied her. The resemblance was uncanny. Same face, same eyes, yet the difference was more than just posture and tone. Clara's voice was soft, like a hymn sung at sunset. Cora's was flint-striking steel. Clara reached for her sister's hand, but Cora pulled back. "I didn't mean for her to come," Clara said quietly. "But when the day came to board the wagon, she insisted." Insisted? Colt pressed. "Oh, why?" Cora leaned forward now, her eyes glinting in the lantern light. "Because the world out there ain't as safe as you think, Cowboy. And sometimes a woman has to choose her own trail, whether folks like it or not." The words carried a weight Colt couldn't ignore. He'd known enough about running from things, lawmen, debts, and worse, to recognize it when he saw it. Something was chasing Cora. Before he could ask more, the boarding house door creaked open. The room stiffened. A cold draft slipped in with the stranger who stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in trail-worn black. His boots were caked with dust. His hat shadowed his face, but even in that dim glow, his presence carried danger, the kind of danger that didn't ask for permission. His eyes swept the room, landing on the twins. His jaw tightened, and a slow, knowing grin spread across his face. "Well, well," he drawled. "Ain't this a fine surprise?" Clara gasped, her chair scraping back as she rose. Cora's hand flew to her throat. Colt's hand inched toward his holster, the air between them taut as a bowstring. The stranger tipped his hat with a mocking courtesy. "Evening, ladies. Been a long ride, but looks like I finally caught up." Colt's voice was ice. "A friend of yours?" he asked, his eyes never leaving the man. Neither Clara nor Cora answered. Their silence spoke louder than words. The stranger stepped closer, his spurs jingling softly against the wooden floor. "Her name's Dawson. These girls know me, and I reckon they know why I'm here." Cora found her voice at last. "You've got no right, Dawson. No right to follow us." Dawson chuckled, "No and mean." "Oh, no right? Little dove, you ran before our business was finished. And I don't take kindly to folks leaving me with empty pockets." Now Colt stood. His chair scraped back against the floor, steady and unhurried, but the steel in his posture left no doubt he was ready. "You'd best explain yourself, Dawson," he said. The outlaw's eyes slid from Cora to Colt. "And you'd best stay out of it, Cowboy. This ain't your fight." The room was quiet, save for the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Clara clutched her sister's arm, her eyes wide with fear. Cora's chin lifted defiantly, though her hands trembled just enough for Colt to see it. Colt's hand hovered near his gun. His mind raced. He didn't know the whole story, but one thing was clear. Whatever Dawson wanted with the twins, it wasn't going to end with kind words and a handshake. And in that moment, Colt realized something. He hadn't just ordered a bride. He'd invited a storm straight into his life.